something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Well, howdy, folks. We are a small little group tonight. Don't know what's going on. Maybe because I've been a bit random with my times lately, or possibly there are no notifications being sent out. I know that I didn't get any for the 3 channels that I should get notifications for. Not one of them turned up tonight on my phone. So that's par for the course, I guess, with the kind of crap we're going through at the moment. And I can tell you we are going through a heap of crap. G'day, Michelle. Lovely to have you. I was going to say I haven't even got one mod in yet. But ta-da! Oh, Sandy got notified. Okay, well, there you go. Maybe it's just me. Those of you that follow me on Facebook know that I don't really interact much there, but I do post stuff up from time to time. And last week, 26th of August, I posted up a speech that Senator Roberts made about the WHO and the declaration on monkeypox that they'd made and how they're going to try and fan this into a pandemic. So some interesting things have occurred today with that. In that, it appears somehow I have managed to breach one of their rules, and I was trying to think because it doesn't tell me. It says we've removed this content, and it gives you, and it gave me the link, which is the link that I've posted at the very top of the chat tonight, so you can see for yourself exactly what the message sort of, or what they banned me from talking about. So I'm just going to load up the messages. You'll be quite surprised, or at least I was pretty surprised for the reason that they banned me. Now, I thought it could be because somewhere in there, Senator Roberts may have said something that they would deem medical misinformation, which is a fairly brave thing to do when the person delivering that information is getting it straight from the government website and is standing in the Senate delivering that information. But that's what they do. So here's what I got. This link, which I've sent to you, goes against community standards on cybersecurity. Yeah, what? Yep. So there are the cybersecurity laws. We don't allow people to gather sensitive information from others. Well, I don't know. I've watched that clip mostly all the way through. I didn't quite get to the end before we started tonight. But if you would like to go and have a look at it, it's at the very top of the chat. I've posted it there. And if you can tell me how it infringes cybersecurity in any way, how I was asking for any information or anything by posting that clip, I don't know. But Senator Roberts is being banned left and right. And he was saying the other night that YouTube have now kicked him off as well. I'm very keen to have a conversation with him about YouTube kicking people off the air. I'm very keen to talk about shadow banning and the practice that goes on there. And of course, for those not so much affecting me, because I've never made a huge amount of money out of YouTube, but there are those that have, and they've shut those people down and shut down their revenue, shut down their income streams, changed their lives, all because a fact checker came up with the idea that you were saying something they didn't like, and or was going against whatever they were paid to make sure people didn't learn about. So, yeah, pretty wild. All right, I'll get into it shortly. Who was first in? Dusty and Grant were first in tonight, pretty much at exactly the same time. I think Grant was in slightly beforehand. Good to have you in, guys. Also, Sandy. I hope you're doing well, darling. Now, Sandy of course, is the lady who has the donkey sanctuary down in New South Wales. Now, if you would like to help, there is a GoFundMe page at the moment. I haven't heard, Sandy, I haven't called you back because I haven't heard back from those trailer people. I get the feeling they've gone a bit cold, so I'm going to go and make some more inquiries. But we are trying to raise enough money to get a new float, good size float. Got to be able to take up to sort of 4 good sized donkeys and maybe smaller ones, so you could fit a few more in. I don't know how you shoehorn them in, but Barry's a big bloke; he could push a few in there. So we'll see. But yeah, if you'd like to help, there is a GoFundMe page, and I will endeavour to try and dig that out, or Sandy might throw it up in the chat before we're done tonight. If you'd like to go and help there, who knew that horse floats or donkey floats were such expensive things? But as Sandy outlined to me when we were talking about it, she needs something that's a little bit specialised given the work that they're doing. So yeah, I think that seems quite fair. All right, who else have we got in? Brett's in. Norsa's in. Belinda's in. Hello, Margot. Daniel, I hope things are going well with you, brother. Suzanne. Zab's in. Andrew. Rob. You didn't get notified. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And it's quite random. Some people are saying here that they have been notified when I've scheduled the show, and others not. And yet yesterday morning, when I did an early show, judging by the very fast way there was a good number of people on the stream, and bearing in mind that I don't hang around like other streamers waiting for the audience to gather. I don't know. Is that something I should do? I don't think it is. I think it's a bit wanky. You can always go back and watch the start. I don't like sitting here talking for 25 minutes to say nice things and say, oh, yeah, righto, I've reached 10,000 people. Now I'll start talking to you. If you can't be here at 6:30, watch it back. It's all good. Aussie Sue, thank you so much. Remember to like and share. And, of course, if you'd like to come and join us at the Voice of Freedom, we can always do with your help and support. We have a membership option from as little as $1.25 a day. I'm going to say hello to Linda, who sent me an email today. She needed a refund because she's a bit down on the money situation at the moment, and it's an automatic deduction, so it was taken out, and she sort of needed the money. So we've refunded that. She did point out also in her email that she hasn't followed me as much in the last 7 months, which incidentally is about the time frame where I've been turning things up on Bosie a bit. So I'm not at all surprised that there are the odd 2, 3, 4 people who may, because the views that Ricardo Bosie holds what might well be the same as mine, but the actions we both take are radically different. And unfortunately, just a bit of a split in the way things are doing. But I understand your position, Linda, and I wish you nothing but the best. And please go forward and fight the good fight for all of us. There are plenty of us out there doing it. Robbo's here. Yep, righto, Robbo. The cap lock's got me. I'll admit, pretty easy to spot them as you scroll down. The lovely Sunflower has arrived in the building. I have put in a request for Candace Owens. I imagine she has an inbox that's, 75 miles deep, and the Voice of Freedom may not rate terribly high on the Americans' list of, great Australian shows to go for. I believe she's trying to come out to Australia, but there is great resistance to giving her a visa, of course, because all the lefties and the purple-haired, nose-pierced freaks will just, not be able to live if she comes out here and has a say. But I do have a request just through the normal channels. I don't have an into her office in any which way. But I would love to get a word to her. So if anybody here knows how to get a hold of Candace Owens and put in a good word for the Voice of Freedom, just so they start hearing that name in the office a little bit, we might get some sort of a reply. So every little bit helps. Speaking of replies, after yesterday morning's show about fire ants, we'll probably talk about them again. the bastards did spray and drop granules, these these fipronil infected corn granules. They give you a great long spiel about how these things break down over 6 days. They become inert if they go into water, which they keep them away from water animal. Like if you've got hens and chickens and all that, they keep them 3 meters away from any of their sort of areas. And yeah, whole great long list of, it's so easy to do, no problem. All of which would have to be done by hand, because you can't keep the granules 3 meters away from anything from the air as you're flying over the top of it. Doesn't work that way. So a number of us here at the property yesterday, from probably within an hour of them starting their work across the road, essentially spraying the army base, we started tasting it, feeling it in our mouths. It wasn't really a taste. It was more of sort of, something metallic-y kind of taste in your mouth. Some people got headaches. Others got raspy throats. I've got a raspy throat out of it. They were back today as well. If only just for probably an hour this morning, but they were doing their turns directly over the top of our property, and while they weren't sort of dropping anything then, supposedly, they're pretty accurate with what they do. I will admit that. And the guy's doing some really nice steep turns. I would have loved to have been in the chopper, but still wouldn't have liked to have been doing what he's doing. Very difficult to get some photos of them, as it turned out, from where I was. And by the time I'd moved to try and get a better spot where they were doing their turnaround, and where I could see them without trees, they disappeared. But many of you will have seen the helicopter. It's a blue and yellow one. I know CASA and Air Services Australia are very aware of it, because when you ring them up and complain about it, they know exactly who you're talking about, but they won't tell you their name, interestingly. So anyway, after that, Guru and I had a bit of a chat. I rang him to ask for his help finding out a bit more information about the fella purportedly in charge of and in control of the importation and distribution of fipronil, which is the poison they're using to kill these ants. And he turns out to be the husband of the Queensland Minister for Police Emergency Services and a few other interesting bits and pieces, including a bit to do with agriculture. Now, there is also, it's also being alleged in some areas that this gentleman has a share in, or is a part owner of, a helicopter company that is involved in doing the spraying and the granule dropping. If that is the case, we'd like to find out a bit more about all that. And I know Guru, through his bunch of very dedicated followers, has a number of really good researchers who sit in there and that he can call on, and does call on, to go and find out information at various times. So I asked him if he would basically have a look into this too. So we're both now taking a bit of an interest in this and seeing what information can be dug up that is there but buried, hidden. You know, they don't want us to they don't want us to find it, but they have to put it in there. Yes, I did finally turn off the stream after I had Roberts on. How embarrassing was that? Guru rang me to tell me that. That's how I think this conversation started. That would be an indication of how tired I was that night. We'd recorded that interview during the day. I wound up talking to you guys for however long it was after that. And I think at the end of that, I said, I am going to bed. Well, that is literally what I did. I was so tired, I just got up and went to bed. I didn't turn anything off. That's how tired I was. So, yeah, rather embarrassing. So I think, yes, the Senator Roberts interview on YouTube and on Rumble runs something like 12 hours. Don't worry, it doesn't. But yeah, pretty embarrassing all of that. Do apologise. Looking for a bit of rain, Pete. 40 mil of rain as soon as possible just to start seed for harvest. Well, I can't help. We can try a rain dance for you. Or maybe the idea will be to ring up the CSIRO and ask them to send a plane over. Certainly got no shortage of aircraft and no shortage of willing bastards to spray you. So, yeah. Hello, Connie. God love you, woman. How are you? I hope things are well in your part of the world, which is not too far from my part of the world, as it turns out. Sandy, people's chat. Yours keep jumping back to the beginning, or is Baz just flicking it for you? I mean, the chat thing. You know what I mean. I didn't see the pedo chant on that, no, but I'm bloody glad that it happened. Yeah. I was going to say, I thought you had a fair bit of rain over that way. Or maybe it was just southern Victoria, mate. It didn't get up as high as where you are. It's probably half the point of that. Okay, Supreme Court of South Australia has ruled. Wow. That's a considerable one. That did happen a few years ago in, I want to say Victoria, but I could be wrong. They had to hand back a whole heap of fines because all the radars were uncalibrated or reading a different, or had been calibrated incorrectly. So that's a win for anybody who's copped a speeding fine in South Australia. Okay, let me just see. G'day, Bergworth. Darren, Bergworth in the house. I hope things are going well with you, brother. I was talking to one of my Melbourne Angels today, the lovely Doris, and your name came up. So in nothing but a good way. So I trust you are well, brother. And our place is something you're going to come and talk to us about in the not too distant future. I know there's a fair bit going on there. So you're a busy man. Haven't you always been? You might remember, folks, that I was pretty annoyed yesterday when it became quite apparent that Australians are the most apathetic bunch of bastards known to man when it comes to doing anything to help themselves. Why do I say that? Well, I say that because we are, but the Muslims are not. Now, while Darren, myself, Guru, and many others are trying to unite and maybe wake up as many normies as we can to bring them to our side of this argument so that they understand and truly understand what this means, it's a battle. It's a very hard battle. It's a battle that the Muslim Votes Matter group don't struggle with because they have an imam or a mufti who is going to stand up at prayers on a Friday afternoon and at any other time during the week and tell them exactly what they need to do, make them understand how the Australian voting system works and what sort of power the Muslim community can have within it. I don't begrudge them for being able to organise this. I get angry because we, as Australians, seem unable, unwilling, or just uninterested, are unable to see the threat that the Muslim Votes Matter group could be in 20 years. But I'm not turning this on the Muslim Votes Matter people. That's not what this is about. This is about the broader government, bullshit, corruption, corporation that is supposedly leading this country now. We need to wake people up to that. Now, we don't have people coming to our mosque or our church, although my place is a bloody good church to go to hear the news about this sort of thing, if I've got to say. But we need more churches, and we need more preachers in those churches with the knowledge to help educate. And I think, in part, that's what Darren Bergwerf and his team with Our Place are putting together, and it should be a very exciting thing. And it will be a learning program. There will be educational aspects to it that you are going to need to learn to move on to gain higher learning. And who said when you finish school all learning stops? If you felt that was the case, then, well, clearly you haven't done much by way of working. You're probably a bureaucrat somewhere. The only thing that changes is the colour of your phone every 4 years and maybe your desk every 10, if you're lucky. So what about Australian votes matter? Australians, cultural votes. I don't know. What do you want to call us? 1%ers, True Bloods. I don't know. Whatever you want to call us. Indigenous. How's that? It works. If you were born here, you're Indigenous to this nation. Doesn't matter about your colour of your skin. So if we could harness all the people out there who are so disenchanted with our government now, and for many reasons, probably different to ours, and they don't understand ours, but they're still disenchanted. We might be able to attract them. We might be able to get someone to stand up that they can support. And we might be able to put our people, like the Muslims are going to try and do, and they will succeed, into Parliament to do things better. Now, I've been talking with a lot of people about the Australian Parliament, which is very hard to argue against a corporation, an illegal operation, an unlawful operation. It's all those things. However, I've yet to see anybody come up with a solution to get rid of it, or how to do something to help us all get rid of it. Now, in olden times, the people would pick up their pitchforks and they would come to town and they would set, the castle on fire and burn everybody inside who disagreed with the people. We're not allowed to do that anymore, and it's probably not a bad thing. I'm not advocating, and never will I advocate, that people go for violence. But I do advocate unity and coming together. Now, just look at the work that the Muslim Votes Matter community have put in to their webpage. And this is their webpage, muslimvotesmatter.org, I think it is, from memory. Let me just stretch that out. Oh, no, muslimvotesmatter.com.au. So, stronger together, the Muslim community is the largest among the fastest growing minority groups in Australia. Very shortly, Australians are going to be the minority group in Australia. You understand that? Native-born Australians, because they are diluting our culture with the importation of so many people, legal and illegal, through our borders. The Muslim collective voting bloc is the most valuable yet underutilised asset that we have. Muslim Voters Matter unlocks the highest influential tool, which requires significant organisation, forward planning, and community mobilisation. Muslim Votes Matter unlocks this highly influential tool, which requires significant organisation, forward planning, and community mobilisation. These people know it. I know you and I know it. How do we get those close to us who don't know it to understand this? Because if we can't, I think it's pretty clear where this is all going to end. There are over 20 seats where the Muslim community collectively has the potential deciding vote. Well, if we had someone to vote for in our community who stood for the things that we stood for, believed in the things that we believe in, and promises to act, because nothing that has been done in that parliament that can't be undone. Bills that have been passed can be removed, negated, deleted. Now, it is the only system we currently have to work in. And while we have UCC sheriffs and we have all sorts of common law groups and constitutionalists with very, very good and very viable ideas, we have no enforcement arm or network against the corporation. They own all that, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the police. And now they're importing police from overseas because they can't get any Aussies or Kiwis or Brits to sign up because they know what it is in those organisations. Doesn't matter to the Muslims, though. Doesn't sound like much, 20 seats. Well, in the last 25 years, no federal government has been elected by a margin of more than 15 seats. What happens when the Muslims gain 20, 25, 30? What happens when the Indians, the Sikhs, the Hindus, who have all been imported in the hundreds of thousands for the last few years? What happens when they wake up to it? Now, I'm not sure that the Indian communities or the African communities, for that matter, well, the African communities are pretty much living together. I don't know that the Indian communities move into areas, suburbs, and take over, pretty much like Western Sydney has been. And that's why Tony Burke, I think, is the member now for Western Sydney, or the one to try and placate what's going on over there. Now, he ran into some pretty significant, I think, problems the other day. It might have actually been today with some of these new immigrants wanting permanent visas. They want them now. They want to arrive on a temporary visa this week and get a permanent visa to never have to worry about leaving Australia ever again and not being able to get back in. They want that now. Why? Because then they're going to get on a plane, they're going to go home again. That's what they do. We've seen lots of evidence of that. And then they come back, they might spend a few months here working, then they go back home again. Look, it's all a great thing, but it's just a great thing for them. They've scammed the country. Now, the Muslims are very good at unifying, very good at coming together when they can see a goal. And they've stated that their collective voting bloc is the most valuable yet underutilized asset that they have. Muslim Votes Matter unlocks this highly influential tool. It is a highly influential tool. It requires significant organization, forward planning. All right? They're not looking at, what's coming after next week's carton of piss. They're looking at how they're going to keep supplying a carton of piss for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Well, actually, no, they're not, because they're going to ban that carton of piss. Alcohol is illegal. What will happen when this voting bloc of over 20 seats in suburbs in Western Sydney, I can think of right off the top of my head, what happens when they win those seats and they win power and the voting bloc exerts power over, let's call it the Labor Party, who are in control at the time, and says, if you're not going to do this for us, we're not going to vote for you next time. The Liberals are going to do it. And what is it they're going to do? They're going to ban the sale of alcohol in those suburbs. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they? That'd be quite a few suburbs in Western Sydney, I would have thought. No pubs, no clubs, no alcohol sales, no drive-through bottle shops. Be like living in Box Hill. Pretty sure Box Hill in Melbourne is still like that. No bottle shops, no pubs. You've got to go outside Box Hill to find a bottle shop. Yes, you can come home and drink your alcohol at home, but you cannot buy it in the suburb. And I suspect that further down the track, when There are another X amount of hundreds of thousands of Muslims in the country because our immigration isn't slowing down anytime soon. That's only going to get larger. And eventually it will be, well, there's no drinking in these suburbs, full stop. You can't even buy it somewhere else and bring it to your home and have a drink. Oh, but I've been living here for 25 years. I'm an Aussie, born and bred. I have a barbie and a beer every Saturday. Bad luck, move to another suburb. It's coming. It's coming. What's it all mean? Well, it means Muslim bloc and what we should be as united Australians. They're in the strategically powerful position to elevate those who bring our issues to the forefront. We are in the equally powerful position to oppose those who take us for granted and ignore us. How about we adopt those two positions before, as a thought process starter, for our own Australian position, our own awakened position? How do we do it? How do we get more normies over to our side? Yes, we're being helped. I think there's more and more stuff being seen every other day in the news, but you've got to have eyes to see it and ears to hear it. There is a lot of symbology. There is people disappearing off the face of the earth, and some of them just disappearing into the deepest, darkest holes of the University of Canberra. Isn't it interesting that Bill Shorten has fallen on his sword, decided to quit politics? This is a bloke who had very, very high aspirations of being Prime Minister. This is the same bloke that when he was the head of the ACTU in Victoria, he was the person that convinced Spotless to sign all their staff over to the ACTU or AWU, I think he was in charge of at the time, the Australian Workers' Union, which was great. That was his job, to try and grow the union. Unfortunately, they didn't bother telling any of the staff. And the company was paying the union fees for the staff on behalf of the staff without the staff knowing that they were part of Bill's union. What did that allow the company then to do? What did Bill's union say? Oh, no, it's okay. You can do that. No worries at all. He cut the overtime rates and the penalty rates for all the casual, and that's all they had, a casual work staff, at Spotless Cleaning in Victoria. Now, Spotless at the time, I don't know if they're still around or still have these contracts, but they were the largest catering and cleaning company for major events in Victoria, certainly, and probably in quite a few other states. The MCG, every AFL football game, horse racing, Formula One, everything. They had the rights and the cleanup rights to everything. So all of these major events, of course, are held on weekends and public holidays when overtime rates are due and payable. Well, not if you work for Spotless, because you've joined the union, Bill Shorten's union. And he did that not just to them, but to other unions, did that same thing. And of course, that gave him a power base that most of the people inside it didn't really know they were part of it, had no concept they were part of the union. Some people actively shunned unionism at Spotless, terribly offended them legally for allowing that to happen, for them to supposedly get a pay rise, which was a secret one, that went to Bill Shorten's mob, and then cut all the overtime rates. So no penalty rates for working Saturdays, Sundays, or public holidays. Just a standard rate. No overtime rates for working past midnight when you've got to clean up after an event at, the Rod Laver Arena or whatever. So no penalty rates for getting in early to the kitchens and starting the cook and all that. None of that. Bill Shorten was responsible for all that. He's also responsible for the NDIA, NDIS. And it's very interesting that he's now looking to bail out of politics completely, because that shit show is costing us $62 billion a year, more than our defense budget. Now, it pains me to say this, that many of you watching the program now are part of the NDIS, have a plan that you work to, and have funding that you can access. Some of you will have a self-managed plan. Some of you will have a plan that's managed by NDIS, I guess, or NDIA. I always get the two mixed up. If you have a plan manager, and that plan manager is really helping you live your best life, thinking that there is an bottomless well of money, a bottomless pit of money that they can simply tap into at any time, they are in for a very large shock. Shorten would have to be thrown out of politics because this has happened under his watch. But what has been allowed, I believe, to happen with the NDIS, NDIA, is that plan managers have taken clients literally for a ride. They have put together programs, hired venues, gone on holidays, and some are quite legitimate. Some of the costs and the fees are quite legitimate. Some of these people need a lot of help, got to have somebody there 24 hours a day. That can't be the one person. You need 3 people for that at least. So, yes, all well and good. But others have taken advantage of the system. And I am really looking forward, I hope, to them being exposed in the crackdown that has been started. And it has been started. There is going to be a very large fraud investigation into the entire system. So I would urge you now, if you know that, you were given a certain budget for the year and your plan manager, or you, if you manage your own plan, and you've blown that out, and then you're back on the phone begging the NDIA or the NDIS for more money or your next whack of it, you're going to be flagged, and they are going to look at you with a very, very big magnifying glass and see exactly what's gone on. Previously, that in the case of some people, hundreds of thousands of dollars have disappeared in days. In days. Some people have gone out and bought themselves brand new cars. Some people have demanded that the NDIS pays for flights and cars and carers in rather dubious circumstances. Some of the professional planners, care planners, have arranged a significant business out of being able to manage our money on behalf of their client that clearly pays them the best wage, pays the people they're with the best wage that are working for them, and gives what in some cases might be deemed an extravagant lifestyle to people in many cases incapable of appreciating or understanding anything about where they're at or where they are at the time. And I'm talking about extremely handicapped people who are basically in chairs and require 24-hour a day, 7-day a week care. Now, are these the people that need to go horse riding along the beach at a cost of $8,000 or $9,000? Are these the people that need to go climb a special mountain, do a special course, painting or whatever? A lot of times I think what is being paid for is some entertainment to keep the carer entertained, because they get to do it too, rather than just sitting down the park or going down the beach or doing whatever. So the carers, in many cases, and the companies doing these plans are organising really extravagant weekends away at B&Bs that cost thousands of dollars a night. It's exclusive. This person that we're bringing, can get a bit upset and get a bit loud and carry on, so we don't want to disturb other guests. So we'll just buy the whole place out. And good old Australian people, through the way this whole NDIS thing has been managed through the NDIA, just get the money. So I would suggest to you that if you happen to be in that business now, really look at what you've done. If you feel that you've taken advantage of the system, don't go throwing yourself on the sword yet. It's my understanding that you will be given time to rectify the issues before they actually may lay charges against you. However, there are some that have abused the system so badly that they will be charged and there will be consequences. I'm assuming that will be plan managers rather than clients who've done it themselves. I can't see that there's much mileage in throwing highly disabled people into prison. But yeah. Dusty, Bill had to go. That's how bad it got. Yeah, well, Bill Shorten's had a bad smell about him for a long, long time. But rest assured, he has milked us, the people, in so many different ways. And now I find it extremely interesting that he isn't going to ANU. He's going to Canberra University as Vice Chancellor, overseeing the young, inquisitive, supple brains of some of our smartest. I get the feeling that Canberra University was not much of a university. I could be wrong. But why is he staying in Canberra? Bill Shorten's a Melbourne boy. I'm not sure that, is he even still with the woman he left his wife to marry? Bryce, whatever her name was, his daughter? Governor General's daughter? She's still with him? She'd be mad if she was. Horrible little sleazy prick. But anything's possible. Maybe they've got kids that are doing well in Canberra, but it would require him moving there. Now, he's been in Melbourne. Yes, his seat's in Melbourne. So why all of a sudden the big move to Canberra full-time? I think, Daniel, we might be onto something there. Yes, the uni is a brainwashing place, and it's marvellous to have all those young, supple minds to go and manipulate. No one else will have him. He's stuck with Canberra. Well, I would have thought that the unions would have him. I would have thought that his government mates might appoint him as, some new union czar to oversee what's going on with the CFMEU and the other unions and try and bring them together in such a way that they can keep doing what they're doing without us taking any notice or realising it again. Crunch love to know all about it. All about it. You know, it's home base. I'd like to me. No one else will have him. Well, maybe they've thrown him out of Melbourne. Well, he could rent that house out of his down there. Where's he live? Moonee Ponds, somewhere like that. Probably get $1,200 a week for it, given the influx of new Indians and students and whatnot coming there. Oh, maybe that's what he's getting. It's mates rates, jobs for the boys, as you say, Tony. But no, I won't say that. That might get me sued. Yes. All right. Let's go back to the other bits and pieces I had here to talk about tonight. Donald Trump's out been talking again.
Listen to this. Who doesn't want this?
Many of them horrible criminals. My vision is for a middle class that is once again the envy of the entire world. It's going to happen. It's going to happen fast.
Listen.
Workers like you and communities like this should be able to afford a nice house, a new car, and a growing family on a single income, all while enjoying the highest standard of living
on a single income. Let's go!
Big promises about changing the entire way that America operates. Can't say that that would be a bad thing. Some disturbing news tonight. The ABC have invaded Russia.
In the back of an armoured military truck, the journey is hot and noisy. The Ukrainian military is taking us to the Russian border.
We're doing what few Western journalists have done in 2.5 years of war, and that is cross into Russian territory. It's risky, it's dangerous, and it means we'll most likely never be able to come back.
Unexpected and caught by surprise.
Так, під дерева.
Now?
Який дрон? Під дерева.
Okay. We,
Під дерева.
keep rolling, Fletch.
Зараз загроза FPV дронів. Під дерева.
Under the trees.
Under the trees. So we'd only been on the ground a few minutes when we had to rush to take cover because a drone was flying overhead. It just tells you the risks that still remain.
The military later tells us the Russian drone was tracking our vehicle. Moscow is issuing arrest warrants for journalists who it accuses of illegally crossing the Russian border.
When Ukraine surprised the Kremlin and its Western allies 3 weeks ago by invading Russia, many didn't expect it to keep the territory. But it has, and troops have continued to move into the north and the east. The question now, what is the end game? And will it bring Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table?
We're on the ground just 2 hours when we're told it's too dangerous to stay any longer. As we leave the villages behind, the only thing that's clear, the horrors that haunt Ukraine have now made it to Russia. Catherine Diss.
Right. I think you got the gist of it. I don't know what happened there at the end of it. The whole thing shit itself and did something very strange. Kicked me out. I found it interesting because the ABC are funded by the Australian government. They have ostensibly, at their own admission, invaded, crossed into Russia, I imagine without a Russian visa. She made it clear, and very proud of it, that the area they were in was an area of Russia that the Ukraine had invaded not all that long ago. It's clearly a bit of Russia that they're not very, very worried about. And she even stated that Putin had issued some orders or some comments about capturing journalists who had crossed into Russia illegally. So an Australian government-funded organisation was part and had to be part of a pre-planned action to deliberately cross into a sovereign nation's territory without permission. If I was that ABC journalist, I wouldn't be there because you'll be charged with spying. You know what happens to spies in Russia? They don't have usually long court cases. They do have short trials, swift decisions, sometimes ending in the death sentence, mostly ending up in an extremely long time in a very cold cell somewhere while somebody else tries to trade you for one of theirs that got caught doing something they shouldn't have. So what can you do? What can you do? Well, you can hold the ABC accountable. They are putting the Australian people, the Australian government, although the Australian government, I was going to say they're putting the Australian people at risk and the Australian government, but they're not putting the Australian government at risk. The Australian government is the risk. That's just, yeah. And why is the Australian government the risk? Because they allow shit like this.
Children as young as 5 will be asked if they identify as she, he or they as part of a new program being rolled out across public libraries in Victoria. Library staff are being told to ask what their preferred pronouns are for children, avoid gendered language and offer pronoun badges, pins or lanyards for any visitors. As part of the Rainbow Toolkit, Victorian libraries will also add books on gender diversity and promote drag queen storytime events.
So, how much harder can it be for us to... We all know we want change. We all know we want it to change. How much longer do we have to wait to change it? Because these blokes, and it is blokes, the Muslim Voters Matter, or Muslim Votes Matter collective, they're ahead of the game. But we can take a leaf out of their book. Our collective voting block is the most valuable yet underutilized asset that we have. We just need someone. That's where you come in. Now, it may not be you. Maybe you're not for politics. Who is? Who wants to go and do it? I think if you've got people flocking to come and do this, they're not the people you want. You probably want someone who doesn't want to be in the game, but who wants to do the right thing by the community, wants to do the right thing by the country. Now, if you had someone like that you believed and trusted in your electorate, would you vote for them? Well, that's great. I can't put that person in your electorate. Only you can. You have to find them. You have to elevate them. And together, across the nation, we will elect people for change. Like I've said before, nothing that's been done in that place in Canberra that can't be undone with the right people. But we need a majority. We need to be able to walk in and clean slate it on a federal level. You've heard me talk about the Trojan horse idea before. It's not so much of a plan. It's not so much of a secret plan at any rate. The Muslims are doing it. Instead of a horse getting sucked inside the castle walls and letting the horde out and inside, now they do it with voting blocks and parliaments. So we need to get inside. We are the horde. We can fix it, tear it down, build something new. But only if we have enough of us elected to do it. And that means some of you have got to step up, for God's sake. Stu, is that me? If it had to be me, yes, it would, I guess. But I know where you live, Stu. You can't vote for me because you're not where I live. And that's why we need people everywhere for us all. I would step up for you, the people. I have no interest in politics for me, but I would step up for you. I would step up for your children, our grandchildren, and our nation's future, our nation's cultural identity. And I believe there are many others amongst you who feel the same way. Do you know the first thing about politics? No, me either. I had a 1-hour phone conversation with Malcolm Roberts the other day after our interview, where he explained a great deal, particularly the preferential voting system and the background to it and why we have it. It was an interesting hour, very educational. I've always believed, or I thought I believed, that we should have one vote, that the preferential voting system keeps a two-party preferred bullshit leadership team in power. But it just became clear to me that that is only able to be broken when we win the majority of the seats. The Muslims have already identified 20 that they can take over or have significant influence in now. We need people in every seat. And we need multiple independents in every seat. Queensland election's coming up. I want to help One Nation. Now, you're probably going to say, what? But I want to help One Nation because we can't destroy the Queensland government at the moment. We can't get what we ultimately want. It's not going to happen. We've got no shortcut to that end result for us. But we cannot allow Stephen Miles and his satanic cult to continue to run this state. Nor do I believe we can allow the other bloke, who at this stage I believe is alleged to have to answer some company or something that he was the sole owner of before disappearing, and along with all the cash. And that's the leader of the Liberal Party they were talking about there. I don't know all the details of that yet, but they're alleging that there is many hundreds of thousands of dollars gone missing. These are not the people we want leading the friggin' state. But realistically, we are not going to be able to step up and get good candidates in enough seats to win power in Queensland under our independent banner. At least not this time, I don't think. I believe the best thing we can do is get as many independents as possible into seats so they sit on the crossbench. And if there are no independents, then I think One Nation are the ones who should be in that crossbench position, because they'll have the people, at least at this point, I believe, firmly at the head of everything they do and every decision they make. If we were to be able to elect enough independents and enough One Nation people to the crossbenches of Queensland, it would break the stranglehold that the Liberal Party and the Labor Party have and have had forever, because there is no upper house in Queensland. There is no, second check on laws being passed and all that. They just ram shit through. Whatever they like, ram it through. So I believe in Queensland, the best we can do is get a much stronger, bigger crossbench that takes the power away from the major party, because they have to work with the crossbench to achieve things. Now, it is while working in those conditions, I guess, that we get to see the true nature of politics. I want to believe that One Nation could be trusted on behalf of the people at this time to continue with the mission and not allow whichever major party they had to do the deal with to do anything that was detrimental to the people going forward. I have to believe that, because I have no evidence to the contrary. In fact, Malcolm Roberts and everything he says and does would support that in every which way. I particularly like him because he likes to stand up and say, on behalf of Queensland, the people of Queensland and Australia, I stand to ask this question. He respects the people. I don't think it's a show. I'm sure it's not a show. So I'm going to offer to help One Nation a little bit more, particularly in Queensland, the lead up to this election, because I am mortified, horrified, terrified that Stephen Miles is going to remain in power with a large majority so that they can ram through whatever the hell they want by way of legislation, and we the people have nothing we can do about it. Well, we need to do something about it, folks. And, okay, the Queensland election will be in October. Rallying enough of people now to stand up in every seat in Queensland, I think, would be difficult to do. But we should be ready for the next federal election, shouldn't we? And if we are going to do that, then we're going to need people to help us coordinate it. Maybe you aren't the one that stands up the front and does the talking, but maybe you are one of the people who helps coordinate all this, because it will take a lot of coordination. I can tell you one thing we have that just about every other political party or independent in this nation doesn't have. We've got a bus that can go anywhere in the country and broadcast from anywhere at any time of day or night to an audience that is very actively interested in fixing the bullshit that is going on in this country. We can be in your town, in your showgrounds, in your front room, in some cases. We can showcase your businesses. We can tell your stories. But we need your help financially to do that, because it takes not me or just me and the bus. It'll take a team of people to be on the road to make that happen. Who's committed to making that happen? Can you afford to come on the road and help us do that? Will you do that? Is that the right thing we should be doing? I'm only trying to throw ideas and options out here, folks, because I'm sick and tired of us all doing nothing. Oh, yes, okay, we go and do Forest of the Fallen, and the things we are doing are great, but they don't seem to be achieving much. Or maybe they're achieving a little bit, but they're not achieving it fast enough. Jason, Australia won, so good, Ricardo. I don't know where you've had your head shoved, Jason. Australia One has no hope. There is no respect for Australia One, broadly speaking, in the Australian market. Ricardo Bosi has burned bridges and has, well, through lack of communication, through lack of being flexible, for the very real reason of the total paranoia that their operation runs under. It can never be. It will never be. I'm sorry. I hoped that it would be too. God, I did. I really hoped that Ricardo was all that he was cracked up to be and said he could be. And I can't fault the policies. I can't. But there is no communication. Oh, yeah. Paul says it well. Bosi scares people. He does. Doesn't scare me, but I guess if he was fully angry and jumping up and down in front of me, I'd feel a bit intimidated. Not for long. I've had a lot of people in radio do that, and I can be a bit intimidating myself for somebody who's 5'7". But I'm not. It shouldn't be about confrontation. It should be about communication. And I just, even when the story blew up about what happened in New South Wales and the what was happening in the Bosie's private life, which was a story I had access to 2 weeks before it came out, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing it on because I just don't think that it was necessary. However, subsequently, it did become necessary. And I could see a way for the Bosies to come back from it. But it takes a little bit of management, that kind of thing. It takes communication and it takes listening to advice. And while I'm sure Ricardo does listen to advice, I know that advice only comes from a very, very, very limited, very highly limited, strictly limited group of people who are extremely close to him and no one else. So I wish, like you, he was the solution, but he's not. He is part of the solution, I would agree. Still could be part of the solution. Let's hypothesize for a moment and suggest that we'll band together as independents and this fantasy I've been talking about tonight, where Australians actually wake up to how politics really works and how we can go in and take back our parliament. I wonder whether or not, I just wonder whether or not we can get enough of us motivated to do that to begin with. Because without that, there is no hope. But if we did have that happen, and let's say we all got in, I would have Bosie, even if he hadn't been elected, I would have him as an advisor. Because there are certain aspects to certain areas, certain knowledge that he brings that would be invaluable. Would I have him advising on everything? No. And that's probably the problem with Ricardo Bosie, because he wouldn't play that role. He's not used to being that second fiddle player, hasn't been for many years. You've got to understand he's come through the military, where for the majority of his career, until he got seniority in rank, all he did was say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Right? He took orders and was able to hand a few of those on down the line, but some of the stuff, it was stuck with him. And then he got to Lieutenant Colonel, where he was given the orders, all of them, and sitting down and doing the logistical work that he enjoyed doing. And I'm not dissing that in any way, shape or form. Army can't fight on, bullets alone. They need food, they need guns, they need repairs, all sorts of stuff. So it's important in any way, other than to say his position was a staff position, a staff officer's position, which generally means they drive desks. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't out in the field at some stage and bouncing off sand dunes or swinging through the jungles. He probably was, but that's not where he wound up. He has been a political animal inside the army for his entire career. That's where these staff officers come from and aspire to. They play the political game because they are with the bosses who are dealing with the politicians. Now, I don't know. There are still many questions about Bosie's associations. In fact, there are a certain number of pictures. I think if he ever comes back on pretty much anybody in Australia's shows again, I'm not sure if everybody's got them, but certainly I think most people do, of him entering a building in Newcastle. I think it is a building known to house ASIO interviews. There are a few questions that he might have to answer. They might be uncomfortable. And the problem that we have is that Ricardo does not like to answer questions. He likes to dictate the way the conversation flows, talk about the things and the areas that he's prepared to talk about. And if you take him into areas that he hasn't prepped for, but he's got a good knowledge on, then that's all good too. If you take him into an area where he doesn't want to talk about something, he immediately becomes aggressive. And that's never a good sign. Certainly never a good thing to do in front of cameras or live audiences. Now, of course, they've taken the darkroom to an extent where they pre-record it now, because clearly the chat and the questions that are being sent in, because they refuse to take questions out of the chat. I think you've got to go through a different hoop to get a question into him. They were all trying to get him to acknowledge many of the questions that were raised after Beck Freedom had her chat with Franco, and rightly so. But Ricardo doesn't want to answer those questions, and he doesn't want to put his staff through having to deal with it, because they come back to him after every show and say, oh, look, all I want to talk about is this. We've had 55 people ask the same question, does Rhiannon talk to spirits to get your guidance on white hats? And we've had, 25,000 people ask this question about, another portion of what was going on. And he just wants to leave it all and go away. And it will go away. But so does all his credibility. So does all his votability, his likability. And it all could have been saved. That's the sad thing. But then I look at it another way. It wasn't meant to be. And you and I know that when it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be for a reason. And while we may not see that reason yet, or many of us think we do, there is still a reason. It'll become clear one day. I don't think he answers anything live anymore. Well, that was what I was told, but maybe that's changed back too, because that was a few weeks ago, and I have been mentioning it now a little bit. Crunch, interesting. You should mention the B2. Yes, we do have the B2s currently in southeast Queensland. That is the Spirit of Arizona, and I think we've got the Spirit of Santa Cruz here as well. Should we be worried about stealth bombers in our skies? No. I don't believe we should be worried about that at this moment. It's more of a show for China, I think, at the moment. I'd be interested to get a bit of an idea of where their missions are going, and obviously there are people around Ipswich who are seeing them launch and recover. I'd be interested to know those times. How long are they out for? And they're doing 2 sorties a day, apparently. So from what I understand, the aircraft will probably do a 4-hour sortie and then come back for whatever period of time and then go out and do another 4 to 6 hour sortie. Don't know if that's the case or not. They're doing day and night operations, so I would expect that some of them are going out for 12 hours or more. What are they doing? Where are they going? Only God knows. And military air traffic control, unfortunately. But I suspect they're doing runs up and down the normal corridor in Queensland and then up to Tyndall, maybe over to Western Australia. And they could also be doing some, you'll find they'll be working solidly out to the east of Australia and around the top end under Port. And they'll be looking at looking for things, boats, submarines, all sorts of weird little bits and pieces. So, God, Jesus. Hang on, let me just go back. Where's that comment? God love you. That's just lovely. No, that is one of the 3 B2s that are here. I think there is a 4th coming. They usually come in 2 ships of 2. So there might have just been one needing a little bit more work. Now, folks, a friend of mine is traveling up the Queensland coast at the moment and has been on quite a run. Came to one of those big service centres on the side of the road. You know, when you're driving, you've been going for 4 or 5 hours and you need a drink, need a bit of fuel, want to have a wee. So you pull off the road and there's one of these massive big service centres there, and you see something like that when you're walking into the bathroom to have a wee. Most of us aren't too worried about things like that, but it's a sign of this large immigration push coming into the country that when you walk into a bathroom these days that looks like that, they need a sign above it that says that. I shit you not. That's in a service centre. I could surmise where, on the Bruce Highway headed north. North of Brisbane. So, wow. I just want to know what you do when you catch the person who is using it as a urinal. Because clearly, if you've got people using them as urinals, it is abundantly obvious, couldn't be clearer, that the dickheads come in off the road and piss on your walls.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!